All right, ladies and gentlemen, at this time we are going, oh, first of all, good morning. Haven't seen you all in a while. Glad to have you back. I'm sure you're glad to be back. We are going to be taking a witness out of order. That means that, as you know, we are in the midst of the cross-examination of Detective Tom Lange, and we are going to interrupt the cross-examination of Detective Lange to present another witness to you this morning because this person resides, I believe, still resides outside of the state of California. Is that correct?
Right.
All right, and we'll be returning. All right, you may proceed, Ms. Clark. Thank you.
Good morning. People call Mr. Mark Storfer.
Sir, can you please raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you make given the cause now pending before this court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please have a seat in the witness stand and state and spell your first and last names for the record.
Mark Storfer, M-A-R-K, S-T-O-R, F as in Frank, E-R.
All right, good morning, Mr. Storfer. You can just slide the microphone just slightly to your right. There you go. Perfect.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, Ms. Clark.
Mr. Storfer, directing your attention back to the date of June the 12th, 1994. On that date, sir, where were you living?
At 12100 Dorothy Street.
And where is that, if you can tell us, sir, in relationship to 875 South Bundy?
This house is on the southwest corner of Dorothy and Bundy.
Okay, we have here a chart that is marked as People 26. If you would step down, sir. First, look at it for a minute so you can orient yourself. And if you can tell us whether there is a box there that indicates where you were living.
No, there's not.
Okay. There is a box, however, marked in purple as Mark Storfer. If that's not correct, can you tell us where your house would have been located?
Sure.
All right. Down in this lower corner?
That's correct.
And for the record, Your Honor, we will have this corrected to indicate. So were you at the corner of Dorothy and Bundy down at the southwest corner?
That's correct.
Now, from that location, sir, did you have any windows that faced north on Bundy? Of course, sorry.
Yes, I did.
On the night of June the 12th, sir, at approximately 10 p.m., where were you?
In bed with my wife.
And did you have a son at that time?
Yes, I do.
And still?
Yes.
Can you tell us, did you have something that you did with your son that evening?
Yes, he had fallen asleep in our bed around that time.
At around 10 o'clock?
That's correct.
Did you take him out of your bed and put him into his bed at some point?
Yes, I did. After he fell asleep, should I proceed?
Go ahead.
I brought him downstairs to his room, which was on the lower level. Our bedroom was on the upper level. And as I was taking him downstairs, I heard a dog barking.
Now, why did that attract your attention?
I was concerned that it would wake up my son. It was that loud and persistent.
Had you heard barking that loud and persistent before in the neighborhood?
No, I had not.
Now, did you see what time it was before you left the bedroom holding your son?
No, I did not.
Was there any point at which you noticed what time it was?
Yes. After I put him in his bed, closed a few lights downstairs, and then went upstairs, I had remarked to my wife that these dogs were...
Sustain.
You put your son back in his bed, and then you went upstairs,
That's correct.
and you remarked something to your wife about the dogs.
That's correct.
At that point, did you look to see what time it was?
Yes, I did.
And what time was it?
It was 10:28 on the digital display on our TV.
Okay. Now, is that the accurate time, sir?
We typically set our clocks about 5 minutes fast, so I would presume it would have been 5 minutes earlier.
Okay, 10:23.
Correct.
And at that point, it was already, what? Give us an estimate how long after you heard the dog barking.
Probably a good 3 minutes.
So what time was it that you estimate you first heard the dog barking?
About 10:20 p.m.
Now, when you got into bed with your wife, it was about, I'm sorry, you got back into the room at 10:23?
10:28 is when I looked at the TV, which was a couple of minutes after I'd gotten into the room.
Right, okay. And so that, given that you set your clocks faster, as you had indicated, 5 minutes, it was about 10:23?
That's correct.
What did you do at that point?
I looked out the window of our bedroom that faces north towards Bundy to see if I could see where that dog was or what was going on. It was pretty dark, and I couldn't see anything unusual, and I couldn't locate the dog. I also looked out the west-facing window of our bedroom to see if the dog was further over to the west. We faced the alley on the west side, and I could not see anything at that time either.
Okay. So when you say you looked west, were you looking down Dorothy?
That's correct.
Okay. And when you looked north up Bundy.
Up Bundy and the front of Dorothy as well.
Were you able to see anyone walking down the street at that time?
No, I did not.
And for how long did you look out the window?
Just very briefly initially, and then we went to bed, and I had slept very lightly because the dog had continued to bark. I'd doze off, wake up, doze off, wake up, and I kept looking out the window periodically.
Throughout the night?
About 12:15, when I looked out the window.
Sustained.
At some point, well, let me ask you this. Up until about 12:15, when you looked out your window, did you look north on Bundy at each occasion?
Yes.
And from the first time you looked north on Bundy at about 10:23 till the last time you looked north on Bundy at 12:15, did you see anyone walking down the street southbound or northbound on Bundy?
No, I did not.
At 12:15, when you looked out your window, what did you see?
I saw a number of police cars with their lights on, and yellow police tape blocking off both Dorothy and Bundy on two corners.
During the time that you kept looking out the window up until 12:15, were you still able to hear the dog barking?
Yes, I was.
Was there something unusual about the manner in which it was barking that drew your attention?
It was very persistent. The dog continued to bark and stopped just long enough to take a breath and bark some more. He whined or yelped periodically.
Now, had you ever heard barking like that coming from that area?
No, I had not.
And when I say that area, what area did it seem to be coming from?
From the front of the house, which is north-facing.
Would that be from the location, general vicinity of 875 South Bundy?
Sustained.
North of your location would be up Bundy, correct?
That's correct.
And is 875 South Bundy north of your location?
That's correct.
And did the barking appear to come from that area?
Sustained.
And where did the barking seem to be coming from in relationship to 875 South Bundy?
From that direction.
And at 12:15, when you looked outside, you saw the police. Were you able to see any dogs?
Yes, I did. I saw a white, medium-size, long hair type of dog tied to a street sign on the northeast corner of Bundy and Dorothy.
Sir, if you could step down and look at the animal shown in People's 26, can you tell us? There's a photograph at the bottom there. Can you tell us if you recognize that dog?
It looks very similar to the one that I saw tied up.
At the northeast corner of South Dorothy and Bundy?
Correct.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Storfer.
Good morning.
As I understand your testimony, you're telling us that there were a number of police cars out there by 12:15 in the early morning hours of June 13th, 1994?
More than one, yes.
And by a number, what number? Give us the total number.
I remember seeing one on Bundy, just beyond the yellow tape. I saw one on Dorothy, parked just opposite our house, and I believe I saw one in the alley facing our house.
So you saw at least 3 police cars there by 12:15, is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm saying, yes.
And as I understand your testimony, the first time you looked at a clock in reference to this dog barking, the clock on your TV said 10:28 p.m. Is that correct, sir?
Yes, it is.
And with regard to this particular clock, when did you last set that clock, if ever?
Probably not in a long while.
So how long did you have that TV?
6, 8 years.
And would you say you had not set it during that period of time?
Oh, no, I had set it in that period of time.
You just have no idea when it was before June 12th, 1994 that you last set it?
Well, I'd set it one time when we moved to that location in April, because the power came out, so I had to reset it in April.
April of what year?
Same year, 1994.
1994?
That's
Had you
correct.
set it after that?
Not to my recollection.
Do you know if your wife had set it at all after that?
Not to my knowledge.
All right. You've discussed that with her at all?
No, I have not.
All right. You've not talked to her about that. What you can tell us, the last time you said it was in April of 1994. Is that correct?
That's the last time I remember setting it,
All right,
correct?
that you can tell us about.
Yes.
All right. And at that time, when you saw it this evening, it said 10:28 p.m. or thereabouts, right?
That's correct.
All right. Now, from your location, and so that it's clear from the record, this diagram that was placed on the board here, which we refer to as People's number 26 for identification. The house is labeled Mark Storfer is in the wrong location on this diagram. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And you're more over on this corner. You're on the southwest corner.
That's correct.
Dorothy and Bundy. And from your window, you have a window that faces them. You can look down the alley. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And at some point that evening, you look down this alley, the alley that runs parallel to Bundy and intersects here with Dorothy. Is that correct?
That's correct. I can only see to the north on the alley.
You can see north, looking up the alley north.
Right.
Is that right? And about what time was it that you first looked up that alley, sir?
Approximately 10:28.
All right, and this is about the time that you first became aware of the time that appeared on your television. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And when you look up that alley, did you see any vehicles or any cars?
No, I did not.
You see any persons at all up that alley? Any people walking?
No, I did not.
What did you see, if anything?
I didn't see anything.
You just looked up the alley and saw basically nothing.
Empty alley,
Okay.
asphalt.
All right. Didn't see any cars, didn't see any people. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. And this was about 10:28, according to your clock, 10:28
According to the
p.m.?
clock, that's
All right.
correct.
Now, from another window of your residence, were you able to see north on Bundy at all?
There are other windows I could see north on Bundy, but I did not look out those windows.
You didn't look out those windows, right?
That's correct.
And so, as I understand your testimony that evening, you never saw any people walking down Bundy in a southerly direction toward Dorothy from north to south. You never saw that?
Not between 10:28 and 12:15, correct.
All right, during the times that you looked. Now, between 10:28 and 12:15, how many times did you look out the window?
I think maybe a couple of times.
And that means 2?
Yes.
All right. And during one of those times, you looked up the alley. Is that right?
That's
Answer
correct.
out loud so she can take it down. So one of the times you looked up the alley, north up the alley, right?
That's correct.
You saw nothing. During one of those times, the other time, did you look up the alley or did you look up Bundy or both?
I don't think I looked up the alley. It was probably on Dorothy and maybe the beginning part of Bundy.
Okay. And so did you ever see a lady and a man walking down Bundy on the west side of Bundy anytime around 10:28 or thereafter?
No, I did not.
Did you ever hear any sounds coming from north of Bundy? Did you ever hear any screams or anything of that nature?
Just the dog bark.
No. Did you ever hear any screams?
No, I did not.
Did you ever hear anybody yell, hey, 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 at all that night?
No, I did not.
So you never heard any sounds at all that night between 10:28 and 12:15?
Not besides the dog barking.
Okay, yeah. I'm talking about human beings now. Not
No
dogs,
human
okay?
being sounds.
All right, okay. And you never saw any human beings, right?
That's correct.
Okay. But you heard this dog barking. Is that
Yes.
right? And it's your testimony that at 12:15, when you looked outside, the dog was tied to a post or something outside?
That's correct.
And you're sure about that, right?
Yep.
Okay. Where was, step down for us and show us where this dog was tied up at 12:15 a.m. on June 13th.
Right here on the northeast corner.
Can we get that mark somewhere, like the mark where he has that in some fashion?
Speaks for itself. You're on the northeast corner of Bundy and Dorothy.
I'd like to have a mark put there. Yes.
Well, it's the prosecution's exhibit at this point. Do you have something similar that you can use?
No, Your Honor, but it's going to be an exhibit for the court, for the jury ultimately. Since you guys want to be able to preserve it later on as to where it says that, if all possible.
Well, he's just pointed to it in front of the jury, so I assume that they can recall that.
All right, very well. Okay. So the northeast corner of Dorothy and Bundy on People's 26 for identification is where you saw this dog tied. Is that right?
That's correct.
You could see that from your window.
Yes, I could.
And did you look out the window and see the dog at 12:15 and see him tied there?
That's correct.
And at that time, was the dog barking at that point?
Yes, he was.
Did you
Or
ever?
it.
I'm
It
sorry.
was.
All right, it was. Okay. Did you ever hear any more than one dog barking that night?
No, I did not.
And was that the first time that you saw a dog that night at about 12:15?
Yes, it was.
And that was right about the same time that you had seen these three police cars that you described for us. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Did you at that point, around 12:15, talk to any police officers at that point?
Not at that time, no.
You did at some later time talk to some police officers?
That's correct.
All right. And did you see them? Did they write a report out at all when they talked to you at that evening? I'm asking you. Oh, well. Did the police write a report out?
The officer had a little blue menu card, and I saw him jot a few things down on there.
Did he? Your Honor, may we approach? Sure. Regard to that.
All right, thank you, counsel.
Do you know, did you ever find out the name of the officer who talked to you?
No, I do not know his name.
At what time did this officer speak with you, sir?
About 2:20 a.m.,
2:20?
approximately.
Was the officer in plain clothes or in a uniform?
Uniform.
And did you ever ascertain the name of that police officer?
No, I did not.
Was it a, can you describe the officer for us?
Hardly.
Male? Female?
Male.
Okay.
Male, medium height, a little bit greater than medium build.
All right. Caucasian?
Caucasian, I believe.
All right. And how long did you talk to him at that time?
Maybe 2 or 3 minutes.
And you saw him write something down on a card or on some kind of a pad or something, you said?
Saw him jot down some note, yes.
And at that time, you spoke to him about what you had heard that particular night, is that correct?
That's correct.
Now, prior to seeing this police officer, had you dozed off that in the early morning hours that day?
Yes.
And then you'd wake back up, and then you'd awaken and you'd hear the dog barking, or is that correct?
That's correct. Until I heard the doorbell ring.
And then you were awakened and you came downstairs, is that
Yes.
correct? All right. Was your son able to remain asleep through this all?
Yes, he was.
Now, with regard to this matter, you gave a statement to the district attorney's office on January 1st, 1995, is that correct?
Yes, it is.
In this building?
No, in my home.
At your home? And at that time, you indicated that you had brought your son down to bed somewhere between 10:20 and 10:30 that night, is that correct?
Correct.
And at that time, you indicated that you looked out the window and you couldn't see where this barking was coming from, is that correct?
That's correct.
And so would I be correct in assuming that you never saw a dog until you said you saw this dog tied up near Dorothy and Bundy there on the corner at about 12:15? Is that correct?
That's correct.
You never told the investigator about seeing a clock on your television that said 10:28 p.m., did you? Or a.m.? Or p.m., right?
I don't remember.
Never mentioned to him, did you?
I don't remember.
Would it be helpful to you to review your statement?
Sure.
All right. May I approach you?
Yes.
Before you, Counsel, the statement taken of Mark Storfer on January 1st, 1995. Investigator by the name of Michael Stevens. It's fairly short. It's about 4 pages. Why don't you read that to yourself quickly if you can?
It mentions here about looking at a clock.
All right,
So that
did you
would be
tell-
the clock.
All right. The question is, did you tell him at that time that you looked at the clock and it said 10:28 p.m.? Did it say that?
Does not say that, no.
All right. Did it say anything at all on there about the clock may have been 5 minutes fast?
No.
Something about that? All right. So you didn't tell him that at that time, did you?
Not at that time, no.
This interview was also tape recorded, was it not?
That's correct.
All right. Now, you woke up about 1:30 that evening, that 1:30 a.m. that morning, isn't that correct?
About 2:20, 2:15, 2:20 when the doorbell rang.
All right, you hadn't awakened at 1:30?
Not to my recollection, no.
All right, let me see if this refreshes your recollection at all. Page 2 of the statement. Bottom line 728. Just read this part yourself. It's a nice part.
Okay.
You read that to yourself?
Yes, I have.
Does that refresh your recollection at all with regard to what you said to Investigator Stevens?
No, but I must have said it.
All right, did you tell him that I think I woke up at 1:30 and of course it was still barking? You say that to him?
That's what the transcript says.
Right. Do you
I
recall saying-
don't recall.
Okay, which would your memory have been better on January 1st than it is now, would you think?
I don't know.
All right, if you said that on a tape, you were trying to tell the truth, were you not?
Sure.
So you're trying to be as accurate as you could?
Yep.
At some point, did you notice any yellow tape lines around the perimeter there at the area of Dorothy and Bundy, sir?
Yes.
And when did you notice that?
Approximately 12:15.
All right, and at 12:15 you noticed that?
Yes.
And you know that at 12:15, when you noticed that, that's when you saw those 3 police cars, right?
That's correct.
And this yellow tape was kind of a perimeter around the area there at Bundy, is that correct?
It was on 2 corners.
Okay, tell us, describe for the jury at 12:15 where this yellow tape was.
Sure. It crossed the north side of Bundy from east to west,
Okay.
and the west side of Dorothy from north to south.
All right. And it just looked as though that yellow tape would keep people from coming in
Yes.
the area? Seemed like a perimeter to you.
Yes.
All right. And it was at 12:15 that you saw this, right?
That's correct.
And this was at the same time that you saw the dog tied up on the corner also, right?
Yes.
And up to the time that you talked to the police after 2 o'clock in the morning, would I be correct in assuming that you still had not seen any vehicles out there, any other vehicles, either in the alley or up on Bundy?
Besides the police cars, that's correct.
Right. and you had not seen any other individuals, either in the alley or up on Bundy.
That's correct.
And you're sure about the times you told us about today, right?
Yes.
Thank you very kindly, Mr. Storfer.
Ms. Clark?
Thank you, Ron. Showing you the statement that Mr. Cochran showed you, lines 19 and 20 on page 2. Did you indicate there that you looked at the clock and that's how you remember it was between 10:20 and 10:30?
That's correct.
And you gave that estimate? When you gave that estimate, were you aware of your habit that you've earlier testified to of setting your clocks 5 minutes ahead?
Yes, I was.
So at this time, is it your recollection that you heard the dog begin to bark at 10:20?
That's correct.
Well, the answer will stand.
The first time,
Same testimony that he had on direct. Proceed.
the first time you looked out your window, sir, did you look at the alley? When I say the alley, what alley are you talking about?
The alley to the west of my house and to the west of Bundy, running parallel with Bundy.
Okay, would that be the alley that runs behind the area of 875 South Bundy?
That's correct.
Okay, and you looked out your window, the first time you looked out your window, was that when you first got back to your bedroom from having put your son to bed?
Yes.
Okay, and what time was it you thought that was?
My clock said 10:28, so it would have been about 10:23.
10:23. And where did you look first?
I looked on Dorothy right in front of the house first.
P38.
All right. You looking at the monitor, sir?
Yes, I am.
Do you recognize that area?
Yes, that's the alley.
Okay. Have I ever shown you any pictures before?
No, you have not.
Okay. So this is the first time you've ever seen this?
Yes, it is.
Okay, when you say it's the alley, do you mean the alley that you just described running behind 875 South Bundy?
That's correct.
And how far up the alley were you able to see from your house?
Maybe 50 feet.
Were you able to see as far as the man standing, can you see the man standing there to the right of the police car?
Yes, I can.
Were you able to see that far up the alley?
I don't believe so.
How far up the alley could you see if you can locate a point in this photograph?
Probably behind those cars parked on the right side perpendicular to the alley.
Okay. There's a car that you see. Excuse me, may I complete my questioning of the witness?
Yes, please.
You see a car that's parked facing in towards the building where there's lights in the balcony?
Yes, I do.
Is that the one you're referring to as far up as you can see?
Not quite that far.
Just before that?
That's correct.
Does the telestrator work for that? All right, I'm going to ask you to guide the arrow.
Okay.
Tell the arrow where to go.
Down to the right, stop a little bit up, and a bit left, behind the cars, somewhere about there.
Could you please there we go. Thank you.
And I could see across the alley from that point.
Could this be marked as 38A, Your Honor?
38D.
D? D.
38D, as in David, we're going to print this.
D as in David.
Print this, all right.
Okay, so the first time you looked out your window, the first place you looked was?
On Dorothy in front of the house.
And that was at 10:23, you said?
That's correct.
And did you also at that time look down the alley?
Yes, I did.
number 50.
Well, it's dark on the screen, isn't it? Can you lighten that? Is there anyone? Do you recognize the location shown in that photograph, sir?
It appears to be Bundy Street.
And can you tell which direction you're looking on Bundy in that photograph?
I believe facing north.
Does this photograph give you as good a view north on Bundy as you had from your apartment or from your residence window on the night of June the 12th?
No, it does not.
Are you able to see farther up north on Bundy from your window?
That's correct.
But that is the location in which you were looking.
That's correct.
And when you looked out your window for the first time at 10:23, you looked first north on Bundy? That was the first place you looked?
I actually looked on Dorothy first, and then north on Bundy, then the alley.
So when you looked on Dorothy, in which direction on Dorothy did you look?
Both directions, east and west in front of the house.
Did you see anyone on the street on either east or west of Dorothy?
No, I did not.
And then you looked where?
North on Bundy.
Did you see anyone walking either up or down the street at that time?
No, I
north
did
on
not.
Bundy? And did you see anyone in the alley?
No, I did not.
Do you recall, and then did you say you looked out the window again at some later point?
Yes, I did.
When was that?
Maybe around 11.
And when you looked out the window at 11, where did you look?
On Dorothy and on Bundy.
Did you look east and west on Dorothy?
Yes, I did.
Did you see anyone?
No, I did not.
When you looked on Bundy, did you look north again?
Yes, I did.
Did you see anyone?
No, I did not.
And you also did not see a dog?
No, I did not.
Could you still hear the barking?
Yes, I could.
Did you look up the alley at that time?
I don't recollect looking up the alley at that time.
And then did you get back in bed?
Yes, I did.
Did you get up again?
Yes,
And what time was it that you got up again?
maybe around 11:30-ish.
Did you look out the window again?
Yes, I did.
Where did you look that point?
On Dorothy,
East and west?
east and west.
Did you see anyone?
No, I did not.
Did you look up north on Bundy again?
I don't recollect. Probably not.
Were you still able to hear barking?
Yes, I was.
And then what did you do?
Went back to bed.
Did you get up again?
Yes, I did.
What time?
About 12:15.
And is that when you saw police cars?
Yes, it is.
And is that when you saw the dog?
That's correct.
When you looked, so on each occasion when you looked out your window, is it your testimony that you saw no one walking north or south on Bundy or on Dorothy or in the alley behind 875 South Bundy?
That's correct.
And the, Your Honor, if I may, I'd like to correct the exhibit marked as People's 26 based on this witness's testimony.
Certainly, when we have Mr. Storfer place the markers.
If we could let him point it out to Mr. Fairtlow, because these are sticky. For the record, the witness is pointing again to the southwest corner, and Mr. Fairtlow has placed the icon in that location. Mr. Storfer, is your residence on the night of June the 12th now correctly indicated on the diagram marked People's 26?
Yes, it is.
And it does, and the window you described does face north, as is indicated on that diagram?
That's correct.
Thank you. I have nothing further.
Mr. Cochran, any recross?
Yes, a few questions, Your Honor. You had described and looking up, may we have 38D back up, Your Honor?
Mr. Cochran.
Thank you, Rick County. And Mr. Storfer, you've shared with us and helped us by placing an arrow about how far you could see up that alleyway. And my question is, on how many occasions, if any, after the first time you looked up the alley that night, at about after 10, your clock said 10:28 or thereabouts, did you look again?
testimony.
Clock said 10:28. I'm stating testimony.
Witness testified the time was 10:20,
Yeah.
10:23.
Clock said.
Clock said 10:28.
Overruled.
Thank you. Well, with regard to that, how many times after your clock said 10:28 did you look up that alley as depicted there on People's 38D?
None until about, no, none beyond that time.
All right. So you understand the question? I'm asking how many times did you look up the alley after you looked this first time that evening? If you
None.
know? Okay, so you only looked one time.
That's correct.
All right. How many times altogether that evening did you look up Bundy, north on Bundy?
3 or 4, including the early morning.
All right. And how many times did you look east and west on Dorothy?
Probably about 4 times.
And you described for us that, again, that you saw the dog was tied at the post at about 12:15. Call that?
That's correct.
And you look at your clock again at that point?
Yes,
So actually that would be about 12:10 then, wouldn't it? If your clock was 5 minutes fast.
approximately, yes.
So then these police cars that you saw, these 3 police cars that you saw out there, they would also be about 12:10. Is that right?
Approximately.
Now, with regard to this clock, you had last set that clock in April of 1994. Is that correct?
Overruled.
You last set that clock in April of 1994. Is that correct?
It's the last time I remember setting it.
Right. And you don't know whether your wife had reset it or you'd had any kind of power outages in that area between April and June 12th, 1994 to check the accuracy of that clock, do you?
No, I do not.
All right. So you're giving us just your best estimate. Is that correct, sir?
That's correct.
And with regard to this yellow tape that you saw up, again at about 12:15, if your clock was fast, it would be 12:10. If it was slow, it'll be even later. Is that right?
Objection, that calls for speculation.
Overruled.
That would be correct.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Storfer. Thank you.
Mr. Storfer, when you saw this dog tied up across the street to the street sign, did it continue to bark?
Yes, it did.
Anything else?
Mr. Storfer, the first time you looked at, you've indicated the first time you looked at the clock. When, if ever, did you look at the clock again?
I must have looked each time that I got up to look out the window.
Do you have a specific memory of doing that?
No, I don't.
Do you have a specific memory of looking at the clock the first time that you heard, when you first came upstairs to your bedroom?
Very much so, yes.
Okay. The times after that, when you got up to look out the window, do you have any specific memory of looking at your clock?
Not specifically, no.
So with respect to the times that you're giving us after the first time you looked out the window, when you first got back to your bedroom, are those times approximate?
Yes, they are.
Overruled.
I have nothing further.
But again, Mr. Storfer, you're trying to be as accurate as you can in giving us these times. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And you believe that that you did look at the clock at other times that evening when you got up. Isn't that correct?
That's correct.
That's right. Thank you, sir.
All right, Mr. Storfer, thank you very much for coming in. You're now excused.
Thank you.
All right, Ms. Clark, are we ready to resume with Detective Lange?
Yes.
All right. All right, good morning again, Detective.
Good morning, Your Honor.
All right, record should reflect that Detective Tom Lange has resumed the witness stand. The detective has been reminded he is still under oath. And Mr. Cochran, you may resume your cross-examination.
Thank you for carrying. Good morning, Detective Lange.
Morning.
You haven't retired yet, have you?
Not yet.
Still there? Okay, great. Good to have you back. You've had occasion, have you not, Detective Lange, to discuss your testimony with the district attorneys. Isn't that correct, Mr. Darden and Ms. Clark?
Yes.
And during the breaks, you have occasion to talk about your testimony. Isn't that correct?
On occasion, yes.
And sometime during the lunch hour, you've had occasion to go up and discuss your testimony. Is that correct?
Not recently, but I have.
Well, when you last testified.
Yes.
You haven't been here recently, I trust, huh? Have you?
No.
Now, in that connection, did Mr. Darden tell you that you ought to be more aggressive in your answers to my questions because I was making points on cross-examination? He tell you that?
For me to be more aggressive?
Yes, in your answers to my questions and to volunteer things because I was making points on cross-examination.
No, I don't believe he told me to be more aggressive.
You don't believe he told you that?
No.
Did you have occasion, I'd like to show you an article. Your Honor, I'd like to approach first, show the court something, if I might.
Yes, with the report, please. Mr. Cochran.
Thank you, Your Honor. Detective Lange, did you have occasion to read any newspaper articles wherein Mr. Darden was quoted? Okay.
Newspaper articles bearing on his testimony here in court.
You stated, Your Honor. Do you have occasion to read any newspaper articles bearing upon your testimony and whether or not you should be more aggressive in your answers?
No.
Did you have any conversation at all with Mr. Darden about the way you were answering questions last week? That is the week of February the 20th.
We discussed various parts of the testimony.
And what did he tell you about the way you were answering the questions?
I don't recall anything specific one way or the other as far as how I was answering the questions.
Well, give us your best recollection about what he said. Did he criticize you during the discussions with him?
No, I don't believe I was criticized.
You didn't take it as criticism?
No.
Well, I'm asking, did he take it as criticism?
Overruled.
What did he say to you?
Again, I have no specifics as far as exactly what was said, but I certainly didn't take it as criticism.
All right. And with regard to Ms. Clark, what did she say to you about your testimony, if anything?
Again, I don't recall any specifics. I don't recall any criticism, however.
When was the last time that you spoke with these two lawyers, either of these two lawyers, about your testimony here today?
At least a week ago, perhaps longer.
That would have been after you concluded your testimony the last time you were here?
I believe that was on a Thursday. I don't recall if it was after or prior.
All right. You don't recall if you talked to him either after or before that?
Well, I'm trying to think back. I believe I testified a week ago Thursday the last time. And I don't recall if there's any discussion on my testimony that Friday or it was before. I just don't recall.
All right. And what was said at that time that you recall?
I don't recall exactly what was said. We were discussing my testimony and what I'd be testifying to.
All right. Do you recall a conversation that you and I had wherein you indicated that you very often don't listen to lawyers anyway?
No, I don't.
You don't remember that conversation?
No.
You don't remember? Does that sound like something you might say?
That I don't listen to lawyers
Listen to
often?
lawyers, they don't listen to what lawyers say very often anyway.
I think I'd be very careful where I said that.
You don't recall ever saying that?
No, I don't.
Yeah, maybe we'll put you in just for a moment.
Sure.
Counsel.
All right. Thank you, counsel. Proceed.
Thank you, Mayor. Detective Lange, do you recall that when you were testifying before, I asked you whether or not you were aware of a controversy between the Los Angeles Police Department and the L.A. County Coroner's Office regarding the LAPD's failure to promptly report the death of individuals at crime scenes? Remember those questions?
A controversy?
Yes.
I don't recall a controversy.
All right. Now, I'm asking you, do you remember me asking you those series of questions?
I recall something like that, yes.
All right. And you indicated to us that you didn't recall any particular controversy. Is that correct?
Yes.
Have you ever at any time spoken with a Mr. Juan J. Jimenez, Assistant Chief of the Los Angeles County Coroner's Operations Bureau?
I know who Mr. Jimenez is. I've never had any conversations with him.
You never talked to him at all?
In passing, not about any specific case.
All right. Have you talked to him, and are you aware of whether or not Mr. Jimenez had any kind of oversight responsibility on the Simpson case?
No, I'm not.
Have you ever talked to him about the question of time of death as it relates to the Simpson case?
I don't recall talking to Mr. Jimenez. I recall talking to Dr. Lashmanan and Dr. Golden regarding that.
And was Jimenez present at that time, if you recall?
No.
All right, so that you talked to him, but perhaps not about this case?
I may have. I've spoken with dozens and dozens of people regarding this case, and many at the coroner's office. I just don't have an independent recollection of speaking with Mr. Jimenez about the case.
All right. At any time when you've talked to Mr. Jimenez in the past, has he ever voiced any complaint from the coroner's department about the LAPD's failure to report or to call the coroner's office promptly to report deaths of individuals?
Objection, hearsay.
Overruled.
I don't recall any complaints from Mr. Jimenez.
You do not
No.
recall any complaints from Dr. Lakshmana, the coroner of Los Angeles County?
No, I wouldn't call it complaints.
Well, what would you call it? What would he say?
Hearsay. Sustained.
Well, how would you characterize what Dr. Lakshmanan said to you?
Sustained.
Has Dr. Lakshmanan ever complained to you about the LAPD's failure to notify them promptly?
No.
And can you tell us when was the last time you spoke with Mr. Juan J. Jimenez, approximately?
It hasn't been recent, and I couldn't tell you a date.
Okay. Now, Detective Lange, when last we were here, we talked about the notebooks that you had, and you were kind enough to go and look through these notebooks that you had. Do you recall that?
Yes.
And on one of the videos, you're seen writing on a kind of a clipboard. Do you recall that?
Yes.
And what were you doing when you were writing on that clipboard at the Bundy scene there?
I was writing crime scene notes.
And were those notes, did those notes become originals in those books that you had when you were here last week?
Yes.
In other words, you wrote something down and you put those directly in the into the homicide book?
That's correct.
Do you have an original copy of the notes that you were writing on the morning?
An original copy?
Strike that. Do you have an original of the notes? Thank you, Your Honor. Original of the notes that you were writing on the morning of June 13th, 1994, the ones we see you writing in the video?
Yes, I do.
And can we see those?
Certainly.
May I put you on?